What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. There's a lot that has happened since the last videos. First off, Patchett has moved into the workshop. This is now Patchett's side of the workshop. He's got his Prem here and his Safira back there. And also Tobin's still here. His R32 is at the fabrication shop currently, but then it's going back to his house. But his 180SX is still here. Got my track car here. A lot of work has been done to this off camera. It's been a bunch of wiring work done and a bunch of fabrication work done. So I've just brought the car back from Robbie, and the intercooler piping and the radiator is all mounted and it's looking sick. Got my intercooler off at the moment because I was just painting the top of it because some brackets were cut off it. This little support piece here I've just strung up because I'm about to paint it, but this is just bolts into each side of the rad support here, and then it ties the radiator in so it's nice and solidly mounted. Got a fan shroud here, so this is super tight to the radiator, which is awesome. It's fan shrouds that aren't tight are pretty much useless because then the fan just ends up pulling air in from the sides and not actually through the radiator itself. This being super tight to the radiator is pretty good. Unfortunately, it was only able to fit one of the fans that I brought. So this is a 12-inch fan, because as you can see, that takes up quite a bit of room, and two would have meant that each one would have been overhanging on each side. Good thing though is that I didn't cheap out on the fans to begin with, so that 12-inch fan with the fan shroud actually should be enough to keep this thing cool. This radiator, also being a crossflow radiator, is also really good for cooling because yeah, usually the water would come in and then just go straight down, is where this comes in, goes across this side, goes down to the bottom and back across the other side. If this fan doesn't do the trick, then we do have room to go to a larger fan on it, but that should do the trick. Coming into the cabin, you see a lot of the wiring has been touched up. Bunch of work has been done. We have a water temp gauge in here now that didn't used to have before. All the switches and everything are all hooked up. Got the battery box here. It's not mounted properly, but we have our terminals and everything sorted. We've got a nice ground going to the back there, and then this one goes up to the engine, goes down that hole there and up to the engine. We have our main power switch here. It's not mounted properly yet. That is going to get mounted. This is just sorted for tune pretty much. And then coming off that wiring there for the fuel pump switch, we have wiring that's tucked up nicely under the cage here, which goes into the boot. It comes back here. So we have two relays here for the two external pumps. There's a relay on the relay board up there, which is for the in-tank pump, which will feed the surge tank. And then we've also got wiring coming off here, which goes to the brake lights here. So this car will indeed have working brake lights. And there's the exhaust. The exhaust is done too. Went with a full 3-inch exhaust system, no mufflers, no resonators. It's a track car, so yeah, we want the full noise. There's a downpipe here, it's pretty good. There's a 3-inch V-band flange there to make it nice and easy to get the exhaust off if we need to. And yeah, this intercooler piping looks sick. I'm so happy with how this came out. Right, so there is a few things that I want to get done on this car tonight. And first thing is I'm going to paint this up, and then we're going to get that back on the car and get all the intercooler piping on and get the front end back together pretty much. So I've painted up the radiator support bracket. There was also some bare metal here because this was chopped back a little bit to allow the intercooler to sit a little further back, and I'm pretty sure that these were re-welded on, and yeah, there was exposed metal here, so I just decided to hit it with some black paint to figure that looks a bit better than it rusting out. On the firewall, the holes were covered up. Unfortunately, that's something that I didn't think of before we painted this car, otherwise would have done that before paint, but oh well, my bad. But they're all covered up now, and again, hit them with some black paint just so it doesn't rust. These little mounting points were welded onto the radiator, so these will bolt up to the car. Bolt just goes through here and into them, which holds the intercooler in place, which is good. So now I'm going to start putting this back together. Going to put the support bracket on, and then we're going to chuck the intercooler back on, and then that's pretty much the front end back together. And that's the front end pretty much all back together. I got this bash bar made ages ago and I had left it sitting unpainted and it got pretty rusty, but sanded that back before and gave it a lick of paint, and you can see how well it's turned out. Also hit this bracket with some paint as you just saw, and yeah, pretty happy with how that came out as well. This front end looks so gangster. I can't wait to have my headlight brackets made. So just quickly threw the bumper on. That looks sick. I'm so happy with how this car is starting to come together now. We're getting close, boys. We're getting close. I've just set the headlight and the corner light in just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what this front end is actually gonna look like when it's complete. Once these headlight brackets and stuff are made, which will happen after tune, but yeah, this looks gangster. So yeah, we got the light and corner light in there. I'm also gonna try and do my best to clean that up because old light sort of got that yellowy tinge to it. Want to try and get it closer to the corner light, but yeah, look at that. That looks so good. Now I'm gonna move on to sorting out the fuel system in this thing. So I've not only robbed the motor and gearbox out of the other S14, I've also robbed the fuel system. So this is the surge tank setup that was already set up in the other S14. Obviously we've got the surge tank here and we've got 2 pumps. This is the only one we're gonna be using at the moment. However, I did have this one wired up. So if this one was to fail, we can just switch it over to this one. Or for future, we can actually run both of them. Because at this current power level, 2 pumps going to the rail is unnecessary. However, in the future, I do want to make more power. So having 2 pumps already set up is just, yeah, future proofing really. This is pretty much how the system is going to sit for now. So I've just drilled holes through the floor there, and I've put a bolt through and little washer and nut on the other side. So I've got 2 there and 1 around the back. I don't have the same bolts to do this, so I've got to go and get some more before I set this down in place properly, but I've drilled 1 hole just to sort of locate it for now. And yeah, this is pretty much where it's going to go. So obviously the wiring for these 2 fuel pumps just clips up like that, and then the plug for the in-tank pump is right here, so that'll go up there. And then yeah, these are all the fuel lines and stuff. There's a hard line coming off the fuel pump there for the feed. Ages ago, I pulled the fuel tank out of this to give it a clean after it came back from when it got caged from Robbie, which was well over a year ago now, and definitely wisened up quite a lot since then, because I wouldn't do this now. But back then when I put the tank back in, I didn't bother to sort the fuel lines and make sure that they were in the position that they need to be. So I got to drop the fuel tank out of this to be able to get the lines and be able to connect them up. It's not the worst deal in the world, because to pull the fuel tank out of this, you have to pull the subframe, which would normally suck if you didn't have to do that, but I have to do that anyway, because if you remember when I did the bushes in this, I knocked the diff bushes out, the old ones, and I brought some GK-Tech solid diff bushes. Unfortunately, I've lost one of them and I have no idea where it's gone. I've looked high and low, so I think it got lost in between moving from the old workshop to this one. So I've gone and pulled the subframe out of the R33, which is right there, and I'm going to slap it in this 14 just for the dyno. So this came with a R180 diff, which will 100% blow up drifting with the 25, but it should be alright just for the dyno. So we'll get that in, and then I've ordered some new GK-Tech bushes, but they're not going to be here in time for the dyno. So when they arrive after it's tuned, we'll chuck the good subframe back in with all the solid bushes. So I got the exhaust outs. Here's a closer look at it. So that's where the downpipe meets. We've got a 3-inch V-band flange there. Come back. That's the first mount, which goes on to the gearbox, and then it comes through. We've got another mount there, which is by the subframe, and then it goes out the back, and then there's another final mount here just by the bumper. So this system should sound pretty nice. So it's a 3-inch mild steel system with a stainless steel tip. So yeah, should sound good on this thing. Now I'm gonna make a start. I'm taking the subframe out. Not entirely sure how I'm gonna attack this, but yeah, I'm just gonna set a camera up and start getting into it. So the old subframe's out, got the fuel tank out as well, and put the fuel sending unit back on it. I've zip tied up the lines, so I know what's what. Put a white zip tie around that one, so I know that one's the feed, and I've zip tied the other line to that. Just hanging that there, hopefully that stays there. Not too sure how I'm gonna get this fuel tank up by myself. This is gonna be a bit of a challenge, but I've also got the subframe that's going in it, ready to go. So diffs in it, axles are in. So yeah, we'll see how putting this fuel tank in goes. Actually, scratch that. I'm not gonna get that fuel tank in. I'm not gonna even bother trying to do that myself. That is gonna be a bit of too much of a mission. So I'll probably leave that for tomorrow, which will be in the next video. But now I'm going to mount the battery box properly. So yeah, earlier in the video I showed you guys all this. Battery box isn't mounted properly, it's just sort of sitting there while we mocked up the battery terminal cables. So yeah, gonna take this apart, and then yeah, we're gonna mount this to the bracket that's there. It's either a, can't remember if it's an ABS unit or an airbag sensor, but yeah, or module, whatever, but we're going to mount it to that bracket. This is what I'm going to mount the battery box to. So this has multiple holes in it that are already threaded. I've got all the bolts for it, so all I've got to do now is make a template to figure out where those bolts are. Then I'm going to cut a bit of this aluminum board out to the shape of the bottom of the battery box, which will sit in at the bottom obviously there, and then we'll get the template that we just took with that, sort of put it in the middle, drill the holes out, and then we'll be able to bolt the battery box to the bracket that's already in the car. Definitely not the best way to do it, but this is what we got, so it's just a bit of paper. Gonna get it, try and make it as flat as we can. Try and fill out where the hole is. And the fourth one is the smaller one, which is there. So that is a very rough template, but yeah, that should do the trick. Just gonna measure the size of the plate that we need to cut. So obviously this needs to sit at the bottom of the battery box. So let's measure that, 28, and that is about 20. So if we go 18, 28 by 18, 18, 28. So now I've got a plate cut out, that just slips in the bottom, just like that. Just marked out my holes on the board here. I've already drilled that one, so now I'm just gonna drill these other three, and then we can, yeah, drill that out too. Alright, so I got a battery box down, plate in, and I am running the strap for the battery under the plate, so the plate itself will obviously hold the whole battery box to the bracket, but yeah, it will also hold the strap that holds the battery in place down as well. So I made this second plate to just sit on top of the bolts so the battery's got something flat to sit against. And here we have our final product. So I ran a strop under the box before I bolted it down. Like that is not going anywhere. So that is the battery box sorted. So that'll probably wrap it for this one, guys. It's pretty much midnight and I'm tired. It's been a long week of work and yeah, been a busy day, but didn't get as much done as I wanted to. I did want to get the subframe back in and get obviously all the fuel lines and stuff sorted out. I've got my surge tank bolted down here, and yeah, I've still, like I said, still got to mount the pumps, but fuel system, once the tank is in, is going to be pretty straightforward. And there is a few other bits and pieces I want to do. I've got to sort out the brakes. I've got to rob the big brakes off the other S14 and put on the front of this. And I've also got to sort out the banjo bolts for the rear calipers. But apart from those two things, which you'll see in the next video, this thing is just about ready for tune. It's Saturday night now, and this car is getting dropped off Monday night to have the ECU wired up, and by Tuesday night, this thing, fingers crossed, you know, touch wood that nothing goes wrong, but yeah, Tuesday night, this car should be running and driving and just about ready to hit the track. And I'm ecstatic right now. Like, this car's been a labor of love. Like, I've been building this thing for quite a while now. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you'll remember me picking this car up quite a while ago. So for it to actually be almost done is just insane. I can't wait to drive it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can't wait to see some footage of it. So yeah, cheers for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the next video. It'll probably be the last video of us working on this car before you guys see it running. So yeah, catch you there then.